Alright, today I'm going to talk about the stakeholders of a project. If you have watched the previous video, you might have a little bit of idea about what a project is, how do we define a project, and what are the components of a good project. One of the things about a project is that we need to have an end goal in mind when we are starting a project, meaning the project is going to have an end at a certain point in time. Now, we also have a lot of stakeholders in the project. A stakeholder is anyone that is affected by the project. There are a lot of stakeholders that we need to keep in mind before planning and starting off a project. The stakeholders are the employees that are working on the project. They are the people that are going to potentially buy from you after the project is finished. And of course, the project manager is also a stakeholder. Choosing a project manager is also vital for the companies. Sometimes the company running the project has employees that are capable enough to be a project manager. And sometimes you have to hire a third-party project manager to handle your project. There are a lot of things you need to keep in mind when you are hiring a third-party project manager. You have to make sure if that person is familiar with the culture of your company and how work gets done there. If not, you might need to educate them in those subjects. There are going to be other people that are going to be affected by your project as well. The seller of your end product are going to be an important stakeholder. Your business might have an effect on the government as well. And the people living close to your factory might also be affected by your business. You have to manage your project accordingly to make sure that all of your stakeholders are more or less satisfied with how you are running your project and what is the end result of it. But there are so many stakeholders. Is it even possible to make sure all of them are happy? Surely not everyone is going to be happy with what you are doing. Doing a thing can make one person happy and another person upset. That is just the way of life. So you need to follow the steps that I'm going to tell you in order to come up with a strategy to manage your stakeholders. First of all, you have to identify who the stakeholders are actually going to be in your project. Then you need to gather information about the stakeholders. After that, you have to identify what is the mission of these stakeholders. What do they get or what do they want from your project? You also need to analyze and figure out the strengths and weaknesses of each stakeholders. You need to know how strong they are and how much they can influence your project outcome. Then you have to do a little forecasting of how the stakeholders might behave when you carry out your projects in certain ways. And after doing all of that, you need to come up with the strategy of how you are going to manage all of these stakeholders at once. Now, what would this video be without an example? For the example I'm going to give you, let us think about the development of a smartphone as your project. I have provided a similar example in order to explain the concept in my previous video. You can go on there and check it out. So, when you are going to develop a smartphone, that is also going to be a project for you. And the end goal is going to be producing smartphones. First of all, you need to figure out who are going to be your stakeholders when you are coming up with a smartphone. Well, we already know that they are going to be the employees, the project manager, as stakeholders, and of course customers. The stores that are likely to sell your products can also be stakeholders. The government will also be a stakeholder if you are going to export the product in the future. And lastly, the people that are going to be living near the factory. So at first you need to identify and come up with all of the stakeholders that are going to be interested in your project, which we just did right now. Then you need to gather information and find out what is their strengths and weaknesses. The employees can stop working if they are not treated properly. The stores might not agree on selling your products if they are not happy with what they are getting. The government might also have a big impact because they can have a lot of influence over your project if you are planning to export the product. You need to figure out if the countries you're exporting to have stronger government than yours and what is the relationship between the two of them. You also need to predict how all of these stakeholders are likely to behave with the way you will be governing your project. After you have done all of that, you need to figure out the strategy you are going to undertake for each of the stakeholders. Now we need to address the fact that all the stakeholders are not created equally. Some were more powerful than others, and some were also more affected by the project than others. In order to differentiate all of the stakeholders, we can use this framework that has power and interest of the stakeholders at hand. In these four quadrants, you see that there are stakeholders with high power and high interest, and high power and low interest, low power with high interest, and low power with low interest. The thing you need to keep in mind over here is that the power and interest can always change. A low power stakeholder can become high power, and also a low interest stakeholder can all of a sudden start having high interest in the project you have. That is why you need to keep all of those factors in check when deciding on your stakeholder management strategy. So these are going to be the strategies. Obviously, you need to manage the people that are powerful and also have a high interest in your project. Getting on the wrong side of these people has the risk of the project being a failure. And the people that are powerful but do not have that much interest in your project should also be kept satisfied. That is because you never know when they start to gain interest in the project. An example for this can be the government. The government is always powerful in any sectors, but they do not take interest in most subjects. But that changes from time to time. For various reasons, the government might start taking interest in your project. You do not know when it might happen, so you need to keep them satisfied. And you need to inform about what you are doing to the people that are not really powerful but have a high interest in your project. Well, these are the lower level employees that are working in your factories. They are not always powerful, but they can become powerful by organizing worker unions. Lastly, you need to keep a close watch on the people that are neither that powerful nor that interested in what you are doing. You never know when they get interested in your project. They can be the people living near the factories. These people are not going to be interested until the way you are running your factory starts harming their way of life. So, now I believe you have some idea about who are going to be the stakeholders in a project and how to manage them properly. And in the end, I would like to say that the Spanish word for turtle is tortuga. With that, I'd like to end this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something new today.